Hello and welcome to another episode of the Mastermind, Body, and Spirit Show. Today's guest is a lifetime athlete. His passion for sport took him on a 20-year journey, leading him to a national championships, or multiple national championships, it seems here, along with other achievements. People's behavior and reasoning has been a main focus. He studied psychology and exercise science at Oakland University in Michigan. He then designed the gym of his dreams and lived it for 10 years. Over the course of this time, he participated professionally in many different fitness-based competitions. He continued expanding his studies into subjects about what it is to be human. He found himself interested in realms that contradicted the fitness business he set up. He closed his gym in 2017 to repackage his philosophy of teaching. He is currently on a quest to bring a deeper perspective to health and fitness. He is about to head out to a farm to learn lessons in sustainability and then backpacking and going on an adventure into the territories of the Far East with a goal of packaging and sharing his ideas into a digestible way that can accelerate the power of the collective consciousness of beings on this planet. Welcome to the show, Ronnie Teasdale. What's up, brother?
Hello. Happy to be
How are
here.
you?
Good,
Yeah,
good.
man. So where are you based out of now? You're calling me from California, right?
Yeah, good old Los Angeles. I've been here 10 years, so it's crazy. I moved here from Michigan.
Yeah, man. And so do you I really liked, I was saying, we were talking a little bit before the show, how I think somebody on Instagram reached out and was like, you should really interview this guy. And so I was telling you, the first picture I saw is like you with a handstand naked doing I see your butt, and then you're doing this crazy handstand, but then you read everything that you're writing. You're really based, kind of similar to me, where it's fitness, sport, consciousness, and mindset, because if you're going to be a high level athlete in anything, you're going to need mindset to go along with that. So I know you've had a pretty interesting journey and you're right at this transition point. So it'd be kind of cool to have this podcast. And then when you go, I know you said you're going to Tibet or Nepal, something like that.
I think I'm flying into Nepal, and then I actually have no plans to come back. No plans. I have no plans. I'm starting the next phase of my life in Asia. And
That's
what that means, I have no idea.
Wow. So you've accomplished a lot in sport. You set up a really successful business in California. Do you want to talk a little bit about your journey, what you've done, and how you got to where you are today, to this transition point, and then maybe what sparked this wanting to travel and go on to a new chapter?
For sure, for sure. Yeah. Uh, so I studied psychology and exercise science in school in Michigan. And when I was wrapping up my schooling, I wanted a gym because that's what I was interested in. I really like people. For me, I have this crazy passion for people, and I liked working out. So of course, helping people through a gym would be my dream. So I moved to California with just like a motorcycle and some luggage, and I just started. You know what I did at first? I found out that I needed personal training insurance to train at gyms, and I needed a personal training certificate. I had no idea what I was doing. I never trained anybody ever. So I couldn't afford that stuff because I was living on somebody's couch in North Hollywood. So I went to Borders Books and went to the stretching section, and I took pictures of a bunch of like partner stretches. I just took pictures on my phone. This was like 11 years ago. And then I advertised on Craigslist that I would come to people's house and stretch them out because I needed money, but there was no way for me to make money inside of a gym. So I had to figure out how to make money outside of a gym. So I just, I advertised on Craigslist that I would come to people's house and stretch them out. Again, never doing that ever in my life. I just did it. I was riding around LA on my motorcycle with a foam roller in my backpack and a yoga mat. Anyways, I ended up getting into an apartment, and I had a squat rack in there. long story short, I hustled all my money. I invested back into more equipment, and I ended up in a 10,000 square foot gym. I'd say 2.5 years later. That one gym turned into two gyms. I had a few other studios also, but somewhere around 3, 4 years ago, I was getting really bored. So after doing it for about 5 years, after living my dream, I wasn't able to teach what I was into. I was into working out outside, and not even really working out. I just go outside and move, stretch out, move, feel my body. Uh, and I was still able to keep myself at a very, very high level of fitness. So when it came to my gym, I've been really bored for the last 3 to 4 years. Uh, so anyways, it wasn't an easy transition out. It's not like I sold it for mega bucks and walked away happy. It was a manifestation that closed my gym, but it wasn't so happy. But I did it, um, and I am happy. And now I'm at a point where I am making moves again. So there's a lot I skipped over, but we can get into that. But that's essentially what happened. I opened a gym. It was my dream, and then it became boring, and now I have more dreams. And I'm still wanting to do the same thing. I want to help people. It's just my vision is a little bit bigger. I want a global approach, because just staying in the high end part of town, working with the people that can afford $200 gym memberships. Are you still there? They,
Yeah.
That's the root of my passion resides with the entire planet. I, I want to be used as a tool for the entire planet, because without everybody, nothing makes sense. Like, everybody has to jump on the ship. So that's where my eyes are set now. And that doesn't require a brick and mortar facility. It doesn't require myself to be present. So I'm going to, everything I've been studying is residing in the Far East. All the philosophy, all the ancient texts, it's all from over there. Their lifestyle is congruent to my lifestyle. So that's where I want to be. That's where I'm going to start off.
Awesome, brother. It's a really beautiful story and transition. So I told you before, a little bit before that, actually, I was super drawn to the East as well. Did 5 weeks, 6 weeks meditating with monks in Nepal. Was over in China training with Shaolin monks as well. And it is a whole nother world over there. It's very different. And when you're in it, I think that you can only pictures are like a fraction of like being in the energy, seeing how people live, seeing a different lifestyle. So I'm super excited for you on that front. And then I was just curious, do you know the book The Masters of the Far East?
Yeah, I'm on book 2 of
I'm on
5.
book two. I'm on book 2 as well, man. I'm on page like 100. As I was reading it
Yeah,
this morning. That's crazy. That's amazing.
nice. Yeah, I read
Yeah.
the first one a long time ago, and then reading 5 books at once was a lot. So I just picked up the second one. I think I'm around page 100 in the second book also.
That's wild, man. Okay, so well, let's go down that rabbit hole then, because in that book, it's some high level stuff. If you read the autobiography of a yogi, have you read that one?
I started to, but you know what? I couldn't read that audio wise, so I had to quit
Mm,
because I wasn't retaining it. So I just ordered it actually. It just came in the mail a few days ago. So I
nice.
haven't read
Okay.
it. End of the story. I
Well,
haven't read it.
yeah. So in that book, just like the Masters of the Far East, basically people are doing insane stuff like disappearing and reappearing. These masters, right? So stuff that's completely unbelievable. And that's kind of what happens in Autobiography of a Yogi, where it's normal. Yogananda's meditating his butt off forever. Then all of a sudden, this crazy 5D story. you know what I mean? Then it's normal. Life is challenging. He's going to the States, that's challenging, and then boom, like absolute craziness. So the masters of the Far East is kind of the same thing. So the question I'm kind of getting to here is, you're studying human potential essentially. You're going through your life process. Fitness is a part of it. Mindset's obviously, and psychology is a huge part of it. Now you want to play a bigger role for everyone. What have you learned about yourself in this process so far? Like maybe helpful tools of like how you transitioned and focused to create, because you created the life of your dreams for 10 years, and then now you're onto another phase. So do you attribute that to any specific like mindset or conclusion? And then how are you looking to make this a global initiative, with what you think? Is it first mastering yourself and having a deeper understanding of these principles and then figuring out how to share it? Or are you kind of just going with the flow and seeing what will come out as you kind of, as in some of the books, just like offer yourself, like I'm here to help, I'm here to serve, and you're just going to listen to the signs?
This is going to be a long answer, I think.
Perfect, man. Yes, good.
So I think primarily to answer the last part of your question is that I am completely trusting, as some people say, the universe. I'm completely kind of like my logical brain I've taken out of the equation, and I'm just watching for signs. And the signs are very, very apparent. So I'm paying attention to that, and I'm just trusting what essentially pops up in front of me, because everything that's popping up in front of me, I created anyways. So this is all me. This is all us, I should actually say. So back to the start of your question, it kind of has to do with the same thing. And you hear successful people talk about this all the time, that they wanted something and then they got it, right? And there's this feeling that like I know young passionate people, or just passionate people in general, get, where they have a target goal in their mind and nothing's going to stop them. And that's something I learned in sports. I knew when I was going to win the game, or I knew when, I was on a hockey team and we won nationals a couple times, and I knew we were going to win nationals before we did it. These things are, I'm connected to these things, but not in the way that most people are connected to them. Like, for instance, when I was 19, I was really shy. I was a really shy guy. I'm an introvert. And instead of approaching girls or calling girls to hang out, I would meditate and seduce them in the like ether realm. And this has never failed me, by the way. I would do it at nighttime when I would be assuming that their brain waves were on the same frequency as like my brain waves in meditation. And I would go in and sexually seduce them. And then all of a sudden they are turning up in my life and asking me to hang out. So I've been kind of using this magical stuff for a really long time before I even knew how to use it. So moving to California, starting a gym was just a combination of all of that. And I've seen a lot of people. I mean, we all have friends, right? And we all know our friends' life stories. And it seems like everyone gets what they want 100% of the time. Everything in everyone's life is there because they wanted it in some way or another. Even things like car accidents and breakups and all of that, it all exists because we created it. So that's kind of how I live my life. And that's what I was alluding to with the gym thing. I really didn't want a gym. Well, the only way that I'm going to get rid of a business that's making money is if it stops making money and like a bunch of other things happen at the same time. Like they were going to demolish my building. I made a bad deal here and there, and then all of a sudden my bank account's empty and now I don't have a gym anymore, right? And it happened really fast, but that's exactly what I wanted, right? And the whole time I was just on this like roller coaster, just looking around, just thinking, wow, in a few months I might not have this business and it's going to be awesome. So yeah, uh, I feel like with that mindset that we are our own creator gods of the reality that we exist in, uh, we we ought to band together, right? Because on this earth realm, I still have to, do transactions with green pieces of paper that don't mean anything. And I have to talk to people who get their source of wisdom from the TV. And all of these people that are supporting the system, myself included, we are we're all signing up for this. And so the more people that are aware that we can choose a different route, we can have a system that sustains itself where everyone can be living in abundance. This is going to take everybody's cooperation. And that's really what I'm into. Like, I want to light people up. I want people to realize their potential. And when we have 7 billion people or 6 point whatever billion people all lit up, it's going to make it easier and more beneficial for all of us.
That's beautiful, man. I love that. What it makes me think of is funny because I was studying hypnosis when I was like teens and 20s or whatever. And then it always, somewhere along the lines of scouring the internet, it would always get to girls, right? And I remember this one like ebook that I ordered, and it was literally an entire book, and I read it as an ebook, maybe it was like 30 pages or something, about how you can seduce women on the other side. And for me, I was the same thing. I was like, if you see me in high school as outgoing but
Hey,
terrified of
describe the
girls.
meditation they used.
Basically it was the same idea where you would basically go into a meditative state, then you would
Was
become
it
like confident, and then you would just see the interaction how you wanted to go, and you would kind of see the energies and like the way that you wanted it to play out, where you actually have this real connection like in that realm, and you would just go into that. You would But the key of that one was coming into states of positive emotion, so you're confident, right? Because that's kind of the main thing. If you're not
mm,
confident in yourself, and like I in high school I'm like terrified of all the girls, man. I still am. Luckily I have a girlfriend. But it's like she doesn't believe me at all. I'm like, nah, man, like it's scary to talk to girls. I don't know why, but it is. So that's super interesting.
it's scary for me for sure. I mean, I do it, but I've situated my entire life where they chase me. Like I've spent a lot of time doing that. But
I
um
think it's your fit butt pictures on Instagram that they're going for.
right
have
now
you
I'm
have
not
you
trying that hard.
have you been to Burning Man before?
Ah, no, because I've never been making plans the whole time I've had a business. I've been unable to like make plans to disappear for a week or two. Uh,
Okay, I was gonna say you'd be allowed to go in the dusty desert with your butt out freely, feeling good. So one day I'm sure you'll
oh,
find it.
yeah, man. I actually think that's a huge part of being healthy is being in the sun naked. I do it almost daily. I go into my yard and get those sun codes on my skin. So, yeah.
Well, that's really interesting that you bring that up, because a few things that I've read recently, a couple of them were these deep channelings that come up on my Facebook. I follow a few feeds of people talking about whatever's going on galactically, and there's a lot of baloney, but some that are really on point. And it was one of those, and two other things that came up. But basically, what they were saying was, if you get a chance, go outside and be naked. And on another scale, I've been talking about him a lot in the podcast recently, is Dan Winter, and he's this physicist that was mentored by Buckminster Fuller, and he goes into crazy physics, but really the bottom line is clean food, clean water, exercise, energy, or sunlight, and energy from the earth, so earthing essentially. But he's like, if you look at the sadhus and you look at these ancient teachers, they're wearing very loose clothing. That's his other thing, very, very, very loose clothing. So I think that there's, yeah, right. There's, it allows your aura or your spirit body or whatever you want to call it to breathe. He calls it like your plasma. I was like, so I find it interesting that you're bringing it up again. So for you doing that as a practice, there's also sun gazing. People do stuff like that.
Mhm.
Why do you feel it's important to like get out there and like for you, what has it done? Why would you recommend it?
So first of all, I want to mention I'm interested in all this stuff. You mentioned some things I uh, I haven't heard of before, but it's all I'm down with it all.
We'll
Uh,
stay connected. I'll send you some good stuff.
yeah, the fullerenes that's like the 3D fractal type images, right? That's what that guy. Oh, anyways. Uh, so back to like my fitness competition days. I was competing in basically anything that would pay me. Not recently, but let's say 2 years ago to 5 years ago, uh, and CrossFit competitions. And I won a lot of money, a lot of money. And in terms of my abilities in CrossFit, was I did really well, to a level where the people I was competing against are people that work out at least every day, if not all day long. And then I was looking at my lifestyle, and I go to the beach and lay down on the ground. And that's what I do for my relaxation, and which is the same thing as me training, right? So I've been working out for a really long time, so I have a good base, but I quit training like in 2012, and that's mostly because of I don't want to get into this because I don't want to keep on reinforcing it, but I have a lot of injuries that prevent me from even like just doing a push-up hurts. So I would never train, and then I would go to these competitions, and I'm podiuming and getting checks, like big checks, thousands, tens of thousands of dollars. And I'm facing guys that look like monsters. And so the explanation that I'm just a really gifted athlete, I knew wasn't true because I'm average. I'm average at everything that I do, which makes me try harder. But I'm an especially athletically, genetically, everything. I'm pretty average, um, and so after a while, I started really questioning, like, how am I able to do this? Because Matt, I'm telling you, I wouldn't work out. I wouldn't do anything for 6 months and then like kill it. I couldn't understand it. So then I started
Dude,
re-educating myself like on everything about life, right? Because you get to a point. I mean, we all know by the time we're like 20 that everything we're taught in school is pretty much inaccurate. So there's a lot of things that we check off the list as we go. And as a responsible adult, we have to start re-educating ourselves about how social interactions between men and women work, right? How money works, how eventually I start getting into like physics and science, right? And seeing I start seeing things that I didn't know of before, and the sun was one of them. The power of the sun is crazy. It is it is the reason we are here, right? Like we are here born out of the sun essentially. And every part of us is made up of photons that are from that star. So I was figuring out that the things that I was just naturally interested in, which was nature, being out in the sun, and like just breathing healthy air and being like happy, these things were actually helping me physically. Uh, to a degree that was greater than maybe if I was in the gym every day, which is kind of like a mind like crazy. But I can confirm now, knowing the background science, if you will, about it, it's definitely true what I was doing. I was essentially charging myself up like a battery, like a super powered battery, so that I could go into a competition and my body would react how I wanted it to. And along with all the power from the water, it's basically what you just mentioned that other guy said. Sunlight, water, earth, and air, oxygen. Oxygen is another huge thing. When you start getting into geometry, which that Buckminster Fuller dude, I'm not like an expert at this, but I think he's into geometry of how our geometrical matrix and makeup is situated. From what I remember, I think that's what he's into. So geometrically, the way that a photon is shaped compared to, and then like how it gets situated in our body, and same thing with oxygen. These are deep topics that I'm just starting to grasp and be able to talk about. But there's other people that know much more about these things than I do. It's just no one kind of listens to them because people.
Well,
Go ahead.
Well, what I was going to say is super interesting. The fact that you're coming like 6 months and doing nothing into a CrossFit competition, because that's one of the most intense fitness competitions you can do. You know, for me, if I don't do deadlift or squats or something like for 3 weeks, my numbers go way down, you know, and then it takes me like 2 or 3 weeks to build back up. So it's super interesting. Like they try to, be at top shape all the time. So that's really curious, because that's like a direct measurement to strength. Like if you want to measure someone's strength, they'll usually say deadlift. So always with CrossFit, there's some sort of like deadlift or basically central nervous system shattering move, like a snatch or something, which just drains the body of energy, but you're essentially charging yourself up like Superman every day, earthing, getting that vibration of the planet, like the resonance of the planet, and just and like then putting almost, would you say would be your like spiritual energy or plasma, or like, like that I don't want, yeah, spiritual energy, I'll just say, into like your intention, like we're going to do this, we're going to win this competition because now I'm directing this force. And then the second part of that was, when you say breathing, were you doing any kind of breath work per se, or just making sure that you would be conscious breathing or meditation or something like that?
I've been intentionally breathing forever. And I've been doing versions of everything, all the stuff you do in yoga class, Wim Hof. You know what? I was actually doing a version of Wim Hof when I was in like middle school. I would go spearfishing in the lake in my neighborhood. And I remember some old guy at the diving store when I was getting a pair of goggles or something. And I wasn't using a spear gun. I was using like a handheld spear and just snorkel. So I didn't have scuba or anything. And he told me about this, hyperventilating, breathing really hard. Well, first deep breathing, then hyperventilating, followed by like how you can use that to kind of trick your body into dealing with the CO2 better. So I'd been doing breathing forever, but like I said, it's just, it's stuff that I was doing without knowing the background science of until just recently. If I were to take a group of competitors and spend time with them coaching, breath was the first thing. It was the first thing that I would go over, because people hold their breath, or they're breathing too much. By nobody, I mean most people don't think about breathing when it comes to athletics. They're thinking about, their muscles, power, speed. Mm-hmm. And the breath is like all of this unlocked potential. If you've never paid attention to breathing, then you have a whole bunch of free potential. It's free. You don't have to spend time in the gym. You just have to alter your breath a little bit, and then you can increase your performance. But, this is a little bit deeper than that. So when we start getting into the geometry of things, like what the shape of oxygen is, the vibrational shape of oxygen. So I guess I'm just going to keep on talking about this. So from my understanding, and like I said, I'm new at this. So, and the way that I kind of assess and manage how I look at the world is everything's just a free flowing evolution, kind of like a conversation. I learn stuff from books, I learn stuff from conversations with people, and I learn stuff from my experience, and it's always shifting. So I'm not claiming any of this is like the end all be all truth, but for now, it's kind of how I'm understanding things. We are, it's pretty common knowledge. I'm sure a lot of your listeners are at least aware of the theory. I'll call it a theory just so I don't make anyone mad, that like matter doesn't exist, right? That we are no different than the chair I'm sitting on, right? That it's just a different shape of the vibration. So if everything is just vibrating energy, essentially, we have differences in the energetic field, and then that's what makes things. And under this model, the vibrations, when you think about vibrations, they're not little squigglies. They're three-dimensional, right? Because we live in a three-dimensional world. And it's not random either. So it wouldn't be random because nothing's random, right? So when you have non-random shapes of vibrations, you're going to get like a geometrical universe, and it's going to be, and that's what all this sacred geometry is, right? The platonic solids, these things have to do with the shapes of the base level of existence. And oxygen's atomic number is 8. And so what that actually, the way I kind of understand it, what it actually comes out to be in existence is 8 stands for the corners on the shape that makes up the element of oxygen. So oxygen's actually a cube because a cube has 8 corners. Oxygen's the third most abundant element in the universe. Okay? So when I just Googled that, and when I found that out, then I said, okay, what's number 1 and number 2? And hydrogen is the first most abundant, and helium is the second most abundant, I think, from what I remember. So hydrogen's atomic number is 1, and helium's atomic number is 2, and then oxygen is 8. So why is there this gap, right? Why is there this gap? So then I was like, okay, if everything's geometrically vibrating, that means that everything, if the very, very base level, you get like a vibrating, like 3-dimensional object that's kind of like a fractal to everything. Of course, the thing that's just a point is going to be very, very abundant. And then the other thing, which is helium, which is 2 points, which is just essentially a line, is also going to be very, very abundant. So that's what explains why these 2 elements are the most abundant. And then in a distant third is this shape that's a cube. And so again, this could be completely false. I'm just guessing here. Why not a pyramid, right? Why wouldn't a pyramid be fitting? So if everything's just a vibrating kaleidoscope of geometry, a cube would fit into a bunch of things, right? Like the box shape will fit into a bunch of shapes, and a bunch of shapes will fit into the box shape in a symmetrical fashion. And maybe that's why it skips over like the pyramid shaped element, which I don't know what it is, but I'm sure it's something. But not many things could fit in the pyramid shape element in a symmetrical fashion like they would into a cube. So with that said, oxygen is very abundant in the universe, which means that within ourselves, we're just a vibrational matrix of geometry. So when we get in oxygen, it's plugging itself in everywhere. So when you look, okay, so where's oxygen? Oxygen's in water. Also, water, it's very, very essential that we get water. Oxygen's in CO2 also. There's 2 oxygen elements there, and that's what's helping all the plants. And then we eat the plants. So when you start looking into oxygen and its shape, and again, I might be losing people here, but if we're just made up of vibrating frequency, this oxygen element is more than just like, when in school, we're not really taught why we need oxygen. It's just like, oh, oxygen goes into the lungs, it goes into the red blood cells, and the red blood cells go to the muscles. And that's kind of the end of story, at least from what I received in public schooling. But like, if you really start asking more questions of like, okay, why do the muscles need oxygen? Why do we need oxygen? Why does our brain need oxygen? It's like, oh, it's because this vibrating cube of energy is actually, it is us. We are just energy, and we need all the pieces. We need all the little pieces, and that cube is an important piece. We need its abundance in our body. So I'm kind of on a journey to discover the secrets, which they shouldn't be secrets. I don't want them to be secrets, but to discover the kind of like hidden truths of why the sun is so important, and why oxygen is so important, and why water is so important, and why, grounding yourself with the frequency of the earth. And so I'm just dabbling into these subjects, and I'm really excited to go to a part of the world where there's less technology and more authentic human capability, right? I'm going to go off on a tangent. You might have questions about oxygen, but
yeah.
Go ahead. Yeah. Let's still talk about oxygen.
Well, no, it's interesting because the podcast before you was with Eric Rankin, who did 2 documentaries on sonic geometry, on exactly what you're talking about. So this stuff is out there. So and Dan Winter has a bunch of videos. Eric Rankin, a bunch of videos. So it's interesting that you're coming to this from a direct experience and then wanting to know why. So it's like, why do I kind of have this superhuman ability? It doesn't make any sense. What's going on here? And then from the physics perspective, they went down the physics rabbit hole, and then they just were bringing it back. And so you're kind of like the result of it. You're just like, I'm having this experience and I don't know why. And it's so simple. So one of the things I wanted to ask was, do you have like some practical application? Like if you're going to coach an athlete or a person, like what breathing specifically were you doing? Can you offer like any exercises that you used to do? Like, would your formula be, get some earthing, stand outside naked, go to the water, and then do a certain breath pattern? Or do you have specific ones that you would do?
So I get this question a lot. If I were to pick one breathing exercise, what would it be? And for me, it's similar to all my answers. I don't really answer the question like the person's expecting. So I'm just going to tell you, I would not try and breathe. So we've got all of these systems in our body that are kind of operating subconsciously or unconsciously. And like our heart rate, our nervous system, our lymphatic system, all of these things are happening. And then we have our conscious brain that operates other things like our limbs and our main senses, our brain's doing that. And then we have our breath, and our breath is the bridge between the two, right? We can consciously control our breath, which means we can use our breath to control the other systems. And most people are controlling their breath all day long. And what that's doing is it's preventing the body from being able to naturally behave in a fashion that it determines is best. So, and by people controlling their breath all day long, I mean without thinking about it. You know, if you're stressed out, you go into work, you're about to meet somebody, all of these situations, you start shortening your breath or deepening your breath or breathing up high in your lungs or whatever. And so number one is to become conscious and cognizant of your breath. And then number two is to not control it. And this is it's an exercise of not performing, and you actually turn yourself into the observer. So, I mean, everyone can do it right now if they're sitting down. If you just kind of relax and then watch your body breathe in, and just notice how long it's at the top of your lungs, and then watch your body breathe out, and then notice how long it stays at the bottom of the breath, and like how it's actually breathing for you. It'll do it on its own. You don't have to breathe. Your body will breathe on its own. And when you do that, your body will adjust to the perfect frequency of breath that it needs, which means that all the other parts of your body that are relying on this operating system to perform the way that it needs, all of the other parts of your body will then perform and match and do things and heal itself to the best of its ability, because your body's made to operate at its prime state. And so if we take our brain out of it, then your body's going to be able to heal itself and be at its prime state. So if I were to give one breathing exercise, it would just be to turn yourself into an observer. And you first start by doing it in a comfortable position, a comfortable seated position, or even laying down, and you just watch your body breathe. Just think of yourself as an observer, and you actually might start noticing you're getting tense. I've had people do this and they tell me they can't. They feel like they have to take a deep breath. And so it might take some work, but then eventually you can take this into exercising and competing and sport, where you become very, very aware of how your body's trying to breathe, and you let it breathe in that fashion. Because most people think the more air, the better. And that starts making things freak out, right? And in a lot of sports, especially where you're competing, the goal is to keep your heart rate down. You don't want your heart rate blasting out of control, because then you wear out. So even if you need your heart rate to go fast, you want it to go as fast as it thinks is necessary. You don't want it to go faster than that. And that's the mindset that a lot of people do. It's just deep breaths, deep breaths, deep breaths. And you know, it's freaking your body out. So I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, no, it definitely did. It's interesting because, you know, for me doing martial arts, it's a little bit of a same but different, especially if you go in a Thailand area, they use that expression. But so we would calm the body down. I would do some practice with observing my breath for sure. Would you have would you say that it's accumulation of practice that you could bring to competition, or when you are ready to do CrossFit or whatever? Because I kind of see like two things here. You've got the mental prep before you go to competition, and it could even be stressed at work. It could be anything, you know what I mean? So you're going to do the competition. Do you do like a breath pattern, or you just observe the breath? And then when you're in it, because CrossFit is like freaking torture. It is so intense. Like I've done it sometimes, and like you're pushing yourself to the limit, like crazy moves. So would the strategy kind of be just observing your body just sort itself out, rather than try to take control of like deadlift is coming up and like you do the three best and do it? Or are you just kind of observing as you go through and letting your body just adapt how it wants? Is that kind of how it looks?
Yeah. And you know, I'm one of the, I kind of stand out because I take a lot of water breaks when I'm supposed to be doing things as fast as possible. So I'm very, very calm. Uh, and I've played with some things. I've played with hyper breathing before, you know, before you start, or taking really deep inhales and less of an exhale before you start. And really, I just find it best to stay calm. I also play with my adrenal glands. They're really important to me. I don't I don't drink coffee. And I mean, I've had like 5 cups of coffee in my life. And then I only drink caffeinated like tea if I'm like somewhere and it's offered to me, or if I have a kombucha every once a couple weeks. So my adrenal glands are only getting stimulated naturally. So if I'm going to do a competition, whether it's CrossFit or something else, I try not to watch the people going in front of me. Oh, I used to do that because I was trying to learn what they were doing, but I find that when I do that, my heart rate starts beating faster, and for me, that adrenaline response is like that's my turbo, right? That's my turbo power. I don't want that ever getting stimulated before I have to start the sport. And this comes to like even like not listening to music beforehand, because I don't want my body like starting to wake itself up until it's ready to explode.
Hmm. That's really interesting, man. Something came up for me, like I had like a deepening of understanding around something around our energy where my dad is notoriously negative. I love him, but he's freaking negative. His superpower is that if you have like the best idea ever, it's foolproof. He'll like, oh, this could go wrong. And then he'll just zero in on that sucker for like 10 hours.
Right,
So
right.
he's been a great teacher. Let's put it that way. And so I was trying to we were out in the river kayaking, and he was complaining about something, and it was like an upgrade on what he normally complains about. It was like a better complaint. So I was like, oh, that's a better complaint, right on. So but then I thought, I was like, hey dad, like all this energy that you use complaining and talking about the negative thing and what's wrong and all that stuff, I was like, that could be well and valid. It's totally fine. Like it could be all be valid. But like if you have a certain amount of energy, like life force, you can give your life force away to things that you want to bitch about and complain about. It doesn't matter to the universe or your creation. It matters to you only. Or you can give that life force to what you're imagining, what you want to create, what's beautiful in the world, what you're desiring, what you want more of, what you want to learn, how you want to expand. Because it's just like I was thinking about wind sprints. If you do a wind sprint in the wrong direction, or a wind sprint, or like a deadlift or a CrossFit competition, and you're using your life force, whatever direction, you're using your life force energy. So in the same sense of the competition, in this simple observation of things activating the adrenal gland, you're not being aware of your body, so you're dissipating your energy. Where what you're doing is you're kind of sitting and you're conserving the body's energy, so when it comes time, you actually have more of it, and then you direct it towards the one focus that you have. That's kind of how I think of
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly
it.
right.
Right on. Cool. So simple but so powerful. And with the athletes that I train and coach, at very high levels, one of the things I'll say about an athlete is I want the athlete to be whole, happy, harmonious, full of self-love, and miss the game-winning shot, and be totally fine with botching. Because if you're Steph Curry, LeBron James, whoever, you're ready to hit the game-winning shot, right? And you have stress going through your body, because if you miss the shot, then everybody will hate you. The city will boo you, and everybody will leave you. Your teammates will, set your car on fire, or whatever it is. That's and even more so, your self-worth is on the line. I played basketball my whole life. This is who I am. Here's time to shine, and you miss it, and then all your identity of who you are just crumbles down, because now, like, that's who you are, as this athlete, but you're not a human being. You know what I mean? You're a human being doing a sport, not the vice versa. So you have all this stress. So when you get to that center point of peace and harmony, exactly like you're talking about, you get the ball, it's a game-winning shot, the whole thing's on the line, you don't have that stress. So the likelihood of you making the shot or performing or accelerating, when it comes down to the gold medal, being the best in the world, you're going to have a way greater chance, because stress hormones is what messes you up. bar none. And so then I'm thinking of like all these little tiny stresses that everybody has in their life that they don't address, stress to get to work, stress to get this on time, stress for this, and all these little tiny energy sucks really derail us. And if we can start from the center pointed awareness, which is so simple to me, it's like you're saying, clean food, clean water, earthing, sun, getting naked, being comfortable and just getting those rays, movement in the way you want. You start with that foundation. And then those stresses and those daily things, they don't have that same effect. So you can really start to ponder deep questions, deep understandings of yourself, what's going on in the universe, and get yourself into what's going on with this geometry and science, and discover people like, Eric Rankin, Nassim Haramein. I'm affiliated to the Resonance Project now, and it's all geometry. And they're saying the same stuff. Everybody's saying the same kind of thing, but we're getting more and more the reason why. But the application of it is so simple. It's so simple, but we place the importance on something else rather than on that base core simplicity. So I think what you've shared is super powerful.
Yeah, we are placing the importance on the science of it, right? It's like it doesn't exist unless technology says so. When I look at the world, I see us in an ascended state of being. I see us already in this dimensional shift that everyone's talking about that's supposed to happen. Like when you take the story away from what we're doing. So me and you were telecommunicating yesterday, right? You're in Canada and I'm in Los Angeles, and we're telecommunicating. The way that we created this explanation for what we're doing is we're doing it over the technology of a phone, which for us, it makes completely logical sense. So it doesn't look magic. But when you take the story away, right, of this reality, what you really have is a vibrational complex on this part of the world telecommunicating with a vibrational complex on the other side of the world. And right now we're doing it, right? And so it's the same thing. I can watch as a scientist discover something in London. I can be watching on YouTube as he's making this discovery, which again, take the story away. What we have is a operating one mind consciousness, right? We're all connected through this thing we call the internet, but it's us experiencing the internet in our brain. Take that away, take the story of us and what it means to be human and all of this out of this. We have a system of humans here, and we're vibrating together and we're connecting our brains together. Everyone listening right now is listening to our voices, and it's listening, right? Or are they watching? Hey, I can't hear you anymore.
I muted myself. I forgot. I was saying it's both. We got the Facebook Live. We got some people watch on YouTube. It's pretty rare, but mostly they get the our soothing voices and our positive vibes.
Yeah, so I have this Amazon delivery that happened when we were doing our meditation. I went on my phone yesterday and did this a bunch of times, and then I manifested myself items that I need, right? So when you think 20 years ago, what we're thinking about, like what heaven is, right? It's not that much different than right now. And then the number one question people want to ask is like, well, what about war? And what about this? And what about animals and taking advantage of them? And I've got an answer I just came up with that, but I don't know if we want to get into that.
I would love for you to get into that.
Okay. So when we talk about, we haven't really talked about consciousness and dimensions and densities. I'm gonna assume there's some base level knowledge that there based on the title of your show and who you are and what you've mentioned so far, right? But this kind of this reality of us as self-aware beings who are experiencing life as individuals is kind of one stage in the game, right? And then there's things like enlightenment, which is a word we've all heard of, but when you look at what enlightenment means, I think it means to be light. So essentially, you're talking about phasing out of this body and then turning into the energy source. And there's a whole spectrum of this, right? There's phases of consciousness, and really how I understand it is we are getting conscious of ourself, and eventually we will be conscious of ourself as the entire universe, as everything. And so right now we're conscious of ourself as a self-aware being. If you look at animals, like, let's say, is that coming from my place or your place?
That's your place. I think you got a fire hazard. Beep.
Yeah. Okay. Well, if you look at animals, we have these things called instincts that we label them. But instincts are, that's like a connection to source. It doesn't actually know what it's doing. It just does it because it's drawn. It has a drive to do it. If you look at like a beehive, there's this hive mentality where the bees are operating in like a group consciousness. So at different levels of consciousness, we have different awareness. So the question comes like, okay, what about humans taking advantage of the animals, and humans taking advantage of other humans, and humans being taken advantage of by powers above us, right? So when you start thinking about like who designed the governments and who's controlling the wars and all of this stuff, you're talking about some high level stuff that like almost like we don't have access to that in our state of being, right? It's like how do I decide what the dollar bill is worth, right? It's like it's so far, I'm so disconnected from it. There might be some other forces that are helping the humans that are the puppets that are running the show. But everyone's taking advantage of everything else, right? And so there's this, I tend not to look at anything negatively, a little bit positive, but for the most part, everything just is. So when I'm looking at like genocides and rape and pillaging of animal species and growing plants for mass production, and I'm looking at all this stuff and I'm thinking, what is the benefit to all of this? How can I sit here and say everything is great and everything's perfectly happening as it is when there's kids being raped in some other part of the world? How is this beneficial? Well, I take the story out of it. What we have is a vibrational matrix that makes up the entire universe, and on this planet, we have different levels of that. And what we have is we have higher levels taking advantage of the lower levels of consciousness. But it's really crappy when you look at it from our perspective as like a body. But when you take the bodies away from it, you have just like a vibrating matrix, and the higher levels of the vibration are taking advantage of the lower levels of vibration. And you kind of have like a self-perpetuating, I don't know if that word's right, if I used it right, machine, right? It is supposed to be like that. We can feel that we're being taken advantage of. We can feel we're being robbed of life force. We all pay taxes. We all feel things aren't right, and we just put up with it. And at the same time, we go to lunch and we eat cattle that was growing on a feedlot with very, very shitty, like life. It's just had a shitty life. And we stomp on the earth like it isn't anything, right? We think that rocks are pointless and like they're just hard, but like all of this is conscious. So the way that I kind of think about like us as a universe is like, yeah, it is taking advantage. Sorry about that beeping. I don't actually even know where it's the entire machine is taking advantage of the other parts of the machine. And when you look at it from like an unselfish perspective, it makes sense. And so what does that mean? Does it mean it's never going to end? I actually don't know. I don't know. I have my own selfish motivations to make things better for everyone here, but I also understand that they're my own selfish motivations, and that there's somebody or something above me who has its motivations. Hopefully, that has to do with the harmony, right? That word harmony, use it a couple times. That's really important. Uh, but yeah, that's kind of how I understand the stuff that's happening on this cesspool of a planet.
That's awesome, dude. It's really interesting. Well, I'll get that question a lot, and I think that I answer it differently at different times because it's challenging. So I really love to hear somebody who's thinking about it, is going through their own process. I think that what you're offering is, like the all is one. We are everything. There is no separation kind of idea, and there's this natural unfoldment of like an evolutionary process that we can escape. Like we're kind of pieces of this grander thing. But I think as individual consciousnesses, we have the ability to shape our reality as we move forth. So, I think that what you're saying there is extremely powerful. Did you hunt it down?
I don't know.
Well, it's been like an hour and a little bit anyway. But man, you've touched on so many interesting things, and you're kind of like in essentially almost like with what you've done in fitness and sport, like this like Superman that didn't realize they were Superman by doing natural things that are so normal, but now piecing together what that meant, and then from that experience you're diving even deeper into the nature of yourself, into the nature of reality in the universe, and in the way that you want to express yourself on this planet in a very simple and pure way. So I just want to say thank you for coming on the show and being who you are, and sharing all those insights, and just ask if there's anything that you would wish that I had asked or want to leave the audience with, any like tools or messages before you go off on your trip to Nepal, and then I'll have to get you on the back when you come back and see where you're at.
Yeah, the main sort of inspiration that I'd like to impart on people is the awareness that we're all here together. And there's, if you're going to sit in a yoga class meditating, breathing in one nostril and out the other nostril, like it's all good for you, but like everyone's going with you. Everyone you look at, everyone you meet and during the day, these are all reflections of yourself. This reality that we exist in, or the realities that we exist in, is your own creation. It is you. So just realize that. And just like I was saying, to be conscious of your breath, be conscious that everything that you see and everything that you feel is yourself. And we need everyone walking around like this. And then we create what we desire. It'll all happen.
Awesome, man. That's beautiful. I love that, dude. Well, I just want to thank you for coming on the show again, and wish you all the best in your travels. I'm super excited to stay in touch and see how things go. I'm sure there's going to be a big part of that trip where you're probably not even in email communication and just, doing what you got to do, man. But yeah, I support your journey, and just thanks for coming on. Where can people get a hold of you before you kind of cut the ties to the let's say I don't know, the internet world?
Yeah, I've got Ronnie Teasdale on Instagram and Facebook. And then I'm gonna be doing a YouTube channel, and this is just stuff I'm interested in. And that YouTube channel is called Our Journey of Heroes. So those are my deets.
Sweet, dude. Well, awesome, man. Well, thanks for coming on, man. Wishing you all the best. It's been a real pleasure. And again, I look forward to seeing how things shape up on your adventure. I'm going to be definitely watching on Instagram and sending you some notes here and there. So thanks
Yeah,
for
man.
coming on. And yeah. And thanks everybody for watching. We'll catch you in the next one.
Cool. That was fun.
Good, man. Yeah, we'll chat soon. Peace.